So one more match in this program, then we're going to find out if anybody watched it. And the other match was a tournament match with Swerve versus Plumber Moxley. And at least, I believe there's a heel and a babyface in this because Swerve is a heel. We know that because the people chant for him and cheer for him and love him. And I believe Moxley is a babyface because he constantly uses foreign objects to stab people and cut them and slice them and choke them and drink their bones and eat their blood.
And he flips off the fans.
And etc. So at least we're clearly defined in our babyface and heel roles there. And the premise of this being the last match was affected because you know that we've been talking about even Uncle Dave and his, Jerry Mahoney-esque sidekick, Brian Alvarez, have been arguing back and forth about the constant overruns on AEW television. The DVR never catches the finish of the main event. They go 2 minutes over, 3 minutes over, whatever. They can't manage their time. Uncle Dave says, well, goddamn, that's part of your job. You got to work to see this show if you're a fan.
It's not my job!
And that's what Uncle Brian says. And that's what we've been saying is that, Jesus Christ, if they can't get their show in, why am I going to bend over backwards? But in listening to the internet criticism, Tony made the big announcement this past week that they were going to have a 5-minute overrun. A 5-minute overrun has been announced for this week, for this program, for Dynamite. It was Monday or Tuesday they announced that. And that's just in case because it's real sports, Brian, you know that, and sometimes sports go over. So they tried to make it look more real this time by instead of just going over and not telling anybody so people don't see the finish, they announced ahead of time they were going to go 5 minutes over. And then these 20-minute time limit tournament matches, they started the tournament match with 15 minutes left on the air. So, but anyway, the plumber started out actually trying to wrestle because he's convinced himself that he's some relation to Hoist Gracie. But it was what you would expect from these two people. And I said, you know what, fuck it, I'm about finished with this program. We're going to see who wins this one because this is one that maybe the finish might be up in the air. You don't know whether Moxley will politic to win because he's the baddest man in the world, even though he looks like a floating corpse. Or you never know whether they'll put Swerve over because Swerve's the one that ought to win this thing because at least it might do something for him. So I zipped ahead to see the finish, at least now with the overrun having been called ahead of time, agreed upon ahead of time. I'll see the finish of the main event. And at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my DVR froze. Because, Brian, we've now found out that apparently it's not just enough to ask for permission from TBS to run over. And it's not just enough to tell Twitter you're going to run over. You have to inform the cable companies that broadcast the program that you're going to run over, or they're going to assume, like they do with most things, that you're a fucking professional and you know how to end up on time. Because the DVR still didn't record the overrun that they announced ahead of time. How many different ways can they fuck this up?
As many ways as you can. Tony's a statistician, isn't he?
So he knows all the ways.
He can figure out ways that we haven't even figured out yet.
Well, he's a-doing it. So who won this thing anyway?
Moxley won, beating Swerve. He is now the point leader in the gold bracket, I believe it is.
Oh, good God.
And the overall point leader in the Continental Classic. And then the show ended where the Devil's Associates arrived. Outside. In the dark. 4-on-1. They're beating the shit out of Adam Page. They throw him onto the windshield of a car. just like what happened to him at Wembley against Crimea River himself, Jungle Boy, and then the Devil, driving, or at least behind the wheel with his mask on, got out of the car to make sure that his presence was felt, and we went off the air, and I lost the last few seconds because it went to 10:06 here, not 10:05. Swerve, by the way, I don't care about anything else and how bad everything is there. Swerve shouldn't be losing. Why Swerve in this if he's not going to win?
Well,
he's the one guy with momentum.
Because Moxley went to Tony and said, well, I'm a badass. And well, you can do it better than me. What did he say to Tony?
All right, so we do a tournament, all Japan style, and then I get all the points.
And Danielson, I forget, is he hurt this week or is he still okay?
Yeah.
Because they're doing the tournament.
To find out.
They're doing the tournament for Brian so he doesn't have to go to Japan for the G1, so it'll end up they've sold Tony on this. So fuck all your new talent that might draw you some money. I'm retiring next year, and the plumber is the shits. So we'll go to the finals because that means that two members of the BBC will have to duel with each other. They'll be sword fighting over there in the BBC clubhouse.
It's either going to be one of them, I think, because it should be Swerve. And if Swerve doesn't get this, Swerve should be in line for the world title because he has momentum. But if it's going to be... Who's
going to be the world champion?
Well, we will find out. But if it's not going to be Moxley or Danielson, I could see them doing something crazy like Eddie Kingston all of a sudden gets points and gets into the finals and gets a big dramatic win because he's a fan of Japanese wrestling. I could totally see that happening.
But back to the question I asked because you glossed over it. But here's what I'm saying. Yes, Swerve should be in line for the world title if it's still going to be MJF. But is MJF hurt to the point where he's going to have to drop it to Samoa Joe potentially? In which case you don't want Swerve versus Joe. That doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing. They're having to figure this out as they go based on who they have not allowed to fuck themselves up this week. So anyway, that was the closing time fuck up. And who watched this fiasco with these wonderful tournament matches that mean nothing to their business?